Fresh meat.
What happened to your eyes?
Where we're going, we won't need eyes to see.
Today's film is 1997's Event Horizon, a sci-fi film that seemed to have missed the masses and only appealed to fans of the genre with an interest in gore. The mid to late 90s saw a resurgence in horror and sci-fi that had fans going back to the theater to see such films as Sphere, Virus, Dark City, Gattaca, Cube, and so many others. Event Horizon happened to be one of the more complex, philosophical at times, and goriest ones. The film starts with a text on the screen explaining how things got to the point where they are now able to travel new distances and explore uncharted territory. The dates are a bit funny to us now, but that's not the most important here. Cut to a ship, and some badly aged CGI of items floating inside. It's eerily empty, and no one seems to be aboard, until a man is seen floating and screaming. Cut to Dr. Weir, played by Sam Neill, missing his lady and reminiscing. This is a Lewis and Clark, a search and rescue vessel, with a crew on a top secret mission. Now this crew is made up of familiar faces. Sean Purry as Smith, Jolie Richardson as Stark, Jake Noseworthy as Justin, and of course as our leader, Lawrence Fishburne as Miller. If this setup reminds you of Alien in terms of crew, quarters in the ship, cryosleep, the breakfast table, and the technology on board, you were not alone, and it's probably not an accident. The film proceeds at a fairly slow pace, showing the crew getting ready to head out to rescue the crew of the Event Horizon, as well as the ship itself. Into cryosleep they go for almost 2 months, and then the explanation of why they are so far into space. See, they received a transmission from the Event Horizon, and explanations are needed and given, so a good amount of exposition is done right here. Then we get to the ship, which is massive and majestic. A few jump scares, some truly creepy goodness. Things start to get real weird once they are all on board. Starting with poor Justin, who has it pretty rough from the start. Black matter is found and assumed incorrectly to be a coolant leak. The split crew joins up together due to an issue with the Lewis and Clark, and things just get weirder. Now, with the whole crew thoroughly spooked, it's time to fix their ship and try to get more info at the same time. More hallucinations, more discoveries that make the Event Horizon scarier by the moment. The core that they found is more than just a core. You see, it turns out to be a black hole creator. Seeing the writing on the wall, everyone wants to just go home, except for Weir. He is just way too into all this. The final ship's log is found, and it can be only described as something Clive Barker would be proud of.
What is that?
More hallucinations happen, more discoveries, more mysteries. Weir gets weirder and weirder. Things speed up a bit, and the action really gets going. Whatever is trying to keep them there also plays with their conscience in order to mess with them further. The ship is repaired, then not usable again, so back to the Event Horizon for everyone. Things escalate. The ship clearly wants them to stay, and Weir seems to be more than happy to.
I am home.
After some time away from the screen, Weir loses his eyes, which only seem to make him stronger in his position. The fighting starts, more hallucinations, more problems, more arguing. Weir does some self-surgery and does a lot of damage to the others as well. He is clearly not well, possibly pure evil. More mayhem, more action, and the film is not afraid to show the gore and go for broke at times here. After a bit of back and forth, some more of Weir looking more and more like a Cenobite, and an understanding of what's going on draws in the viewer. It's now pretty clear that it's not just Weir being crazy. It's not just his idea that the other dimension that was found was pure chaos. It's reality. The ones that are still alive at the end get rid of Weir and go into cryosleep hoping to be rescued. Cut to 72 days later. A new rescue crew finds them. There are still hallucinations, but is it over? Hell is only a word. The reality
is
much worse. Event Horizon's original cut was 130 minutes, with some much more gruesome scenes. The cut currently in existence is supposedly all that remains, as the majority of the cut material from the 130-minute version seems to have vanished. Now, there may be a VHS version available somewhere, but even director Paul W.S. Anderson is unsure if it actually exists, and Shout Factory couldn't find it for their new Blu-ray special edition release. The many cuts were made to please the studio and were made in a hurry, a decision Anderson has regretted. These were important for marketability, as the original cut had received the dreaded NC-17 rating. Even though the studio later wanted to get an uncut, or at least a longer cut restored, as the film had done so well in video, the cut footage had either gone missing or is in such a poor state that it was unusable. Of course, a find of extra footage is always possible, as shown by the recent extended cuts of films like Metropolis and Nightbreed, but as of this recording, it is still yet to be found. Director Paul W.S. Anderson is better known to audiences for his take on video game adaptations, more famously the Mortal Kombat adaptation of the 90s, and of course, a few other Resident Evil films. He has also directed sequels and remakes that were not his most well-received, such as Alien vs. Predator or Death Race. Event Horizon, while one of his earlier efforts, is still arguably his best film to date, closely followed by the 1998 film, and a personal favorite of mine, Kurt Russell's Soldier.
I'm going to kill them all, sir.
Working mostly with his wife Emilie in the lead of his films, the two have made for a creative duo that have turned out films that were popular, but, not his best. Writer Philip Eisner, for his part, started his writing career with Event Horizon, a film he wrote as part of a multi-picture deal with the studio. He has only 3 written credits of films since then, including Firestarter 2, Rekindled, and Mutant Chronicles. While there is some fun in his work, he would not be considered prolific in any way. Event Horizon is a special effects heavy sci-fi film, with a mix of everything from practical to CGI to animatronics being used throughout the film. Unfortunately, these effects are not always even, as time can be a cruel mistress. The best bits are the space sequences in the opening of the film where Sam Neill is in space, comfortably orbiting the Earth, and the practical effects on his character near the end of the film are lovingly gross. The early sequence in low orbit is one that took about a third of the visual effects budget to achieve, leaving the rest of the film with possibly not enough money, as can be seen in the sequence with the floating objects in the corridor. Speaking of the ship, its design is detailed, so detailed in fact, that a keen nerdy eye might be able to spot an X-Wing from that, much-loved sci-fi trilogy. More details inside the ship lead to designs that remind me of Mother and Alien, or Hellraiser when talking about the core. And many parts of the film are reminiscent of other sci-fi and horror entries, giving the viewer homages that are sometimes easy to spot and sometimes easy to miss. It all adds to the film's layers and details, making it a well-thought-out production. It should be noted that the practical effects are high quality throughout, with a majority of them coming later in the film. The sequence in the ship's log shows a lot of these in a damaged manner, which should help any film look creepy. But what is shown in direct images on the ship, when Weir loses his mind, shows that the practical side of things was very strong with this one. Okay, so what do I think of Event Horizon? Well, it starts a bit slow, like a good slow burn should, until the space matter hits the fan and things go from 1 to 100 in terms of madness. This takes the film from a simple sci-fi mystery into a really interesting film. There's a lot to unpack here, and horror fans, especially those who love Clive Barker's work, get to really dig in. The idea of being chaos dimension is enough to want to have more than one film about it. Event Horizon feels like an introduction to a world that could be much larger and much darker, but clearly limited by runtime and rating. Had they been able to stick to the NC-17 rating and just release it as was, it could have been a much better, much more disgusting film. As it is, it's entertaining and gives the chills here and there with a few sequences, including a certain death scene, that makes the horror-loving heart pity-patter. It's the kind of film that starts mellow enough to make most people more comfortable, and almost feels like a ghost story at first. Then things take a turn and it gets violent, it gets gory, it gets fun. With that being said, now onto my pitch for Event Horizon 2. Given what films can get away with these days and how this would most likely be a direct-to-VOD film, or maybe even streaming, there's a lot that can be explored in a sequel, so why not go with a full-on visit to the Chaos Dimension? Start the film where this one left off, with the new rescue team coming to the rescue of Justin, Stark, and Cooper. Once they are out of cryosleep, have them hear some of their hallucinations again, but this time include the rest of the crew as part of them. Those who died trying to get out of the Event Horizon. Have these hallucinations tell them it's their fault, that the crew died and they deserve to join the chaos. Build this up for a while and then introduce Weir again, only weirder, grosser, and more damaged. Have him be a sort of priest of chaos. Yeah, definitely still giving homage to Clive Barker's work. Maybe even go as far as to reference the Scarlet Gospels instead of just going with the Hellraiser aesthetic. Make it gorier, scarier. Allow the film to give full-on snippets of what is on the chaos side of things. then have Stark and Cooper hallucinate that they're being called to the gateway. They work against the rescue team for a while, but eventually win them over and get them to join in opening the gateway. To do so this time, they need to drain the energy from the new rescue ship as the Event Horizon is now split in half, without a corridor to bring the living quarters with the gateway. Cooper, having shown his skills as repairing the Lewis and Clark, goes to work to destabilize and destroy the new rescue ship, having to do so under the guise of trying to restore the Event Horizon enough to tow it back home, as the original rescue mission was meant to bring both the crew and the ship back. For this, he gets the new crew to dock their ship to the Event Horizon's living quarters, where they had entered by way of tunnel extension, similarly to the Lewis and Clark in the first film. First order of the day, get both the living quarters and the gateway connected again so that Stark can work on the crew and get them to where they need to be. To do so, Cooper gets the new ship and the Event Horizon connected enough to push the living quarters back to the gateway section, using ingenuity and a lot of hard work. While Cooper works on this part with the new crew, a severely disfigured Justin helps Stark get the gateway open and goes in first. As she is left with the new crew, Stark finds ways of harnessing the Event Horizon's psychological grasp on people, so that they can get everyone on board, her idea of a good time. Here, we get to see what the new crew sees in their hallucinations, including a father worried about leaving his kids behind with elderly guardians, a woman regretting moving on to this career too fast to escape something horrible back home, and an older crew member being shown doing a mercy killing. Now, Justin is on the other side, in the chaos dimension, where scene after scene of chaos and debauchery are shown in small snippets. We want a high rating, we're not censoring here. As he explores and slowly adapts to their ways and their looks, we see him changing, adding medical enhancements and removals, changes to his stance, as well as his physical appearance, his passing from one room to the next, visiting all corners of the chaos dimension. Now, the film goes back and forth between these scenes and the scenes of Stark working on the crew to get them back into the new dimension. As the film advances, stories are told of the previous crew, allowing for just a few flashbacks here and there. Perhaps use some of the unused footage that still exists but may not be full-on usable. The flashbacks would allow for these to be distorted and designed like hallucinations and bad trips. So there's a way to use whatever might be unearthed someday and also create new sequences that can easily be brought back with the same effects. Stark and Cooper work together without even communicating. Something is directing them silently, like a force, perhaps a force of the Event Horizon that pulled them to the ship originally. As a new rescue crew with Stark and Cooper make it across the gateway, walking into the black hole and giving themselves fully into the chaos dimension. Weir is waiting for them on the other side, still played by the great Sam Neill, covered in scars and modifications, showing that the chaos dimension is somewhere between dream, nightmare, and fantasy to some. The line from the first film gets changed by Weir to, "Hell is only a word. The reality is much, much better," thus showing his full integration into the chaos dimension, where he thrives and has followers of sorts standing behind him, waiting to do his bidding. Fade to black to the screams from the new crew. There it is. That's how I would have followed up Event Horizon, and I hope you liked it. Hey, thanks for watching our show. Please subscribe to our JoBlo Horror Videos channel. Tell your friends who like this sort of content, and turn on the bell to receive notifications for all of our latest videos. Listen, we're an independent company, and we appreciate all of your support.